Thank you so much and good morning everyone. I think I'll probably be a good follow-on to Drasana because I think the most things I'm going to talk about today is treating people like a human being, asking them what they want, what they need and what is their best opportunities for success in any situation. And it really all comes down to about asking people. And I'll sort of preclude that with there was a TEDx talk and they were a bit excited because Stella Young had done a talk about I'm Not Your Inspiration, and it was the most watched TEDx talk in the world. And so last year they were like, yeah, disability is this big inclusive thing, we're going to do that. And they came out with the message of just ask people with disabilities, just ask them. And it didn't go down well. But the main thing that they forgot is the human being factor. It's not just ask them, it's treat them like an everyday person. It's a person that you're meeting. Say hello, how are you? Become friends with them. Or if they're in a job opportunity, talk to them first about themselves, but then ask them. Because the main concern was people from the community coming out going, I don't want to be walking down the street and 20 people going, hey, how are you? How did you get your disability? What's up with that? And that was the main thing. So it's about that precursor of the same as you would treat anyone. You don't just go straight in and ask personal questions. You need to establish that relationship first. So that's really what I want to talk about a lot today. But I think I need to talk about a fair bit about who I am and why I'm here and why I founded Enabled Employment and why I work in the disability sector. So the main reason is I'm a person with a disability. I've had a disability my entire life. I've always had really severe anxiety. My first memories are of Mum saying, what ice cream would you like? You can have any ice cream you want. And me going, oh, get the 20-cent one because if I buy the $2 one, I know Mum doesn't have the money. And this is like a 3.5-year-old. So everything was surrounding that. And I then was, unfortunately, sexually assaulted by my paternal grandfather when I was 4. So my anxiety became a dissociative anxiety disorder. So where you remove yourself from your body or your interactions. And so whenever I have a panic attack, I look like I've gone to sleep or I completely disengage. And that's my anxiety. So I've managed it my whole life with medication, with help from psychologists and the like. And I had a fantastic career. So it never hindered me in my career because I didn't have to disclose. And I was a workaholic because I wanted to worry about other people's problems, not my problems. And so I had a fantastic career. I was at the age of 30, an executive level 2 in the government, running $1 billion program, had 17 staff, everything was going fabulously. And I had my daughter in 2011, and as with any woman having children, it changes your life. But it had a huge effect on me because I ended up with a condition called postpartum thyroiditis, which is overactive thyroid from your autoimmune response. So the symptoms of that is anxiety. My resting heart rate when they found I had it was 180 beats per minute. And the only reason they found it was because every time I stood up, I kept feeling like I was going to faint. But I was already anxious, so but it meant the medication didn't work, I couldn't control anything, and I was sitting at home with a baby all the time, so I was worrying about my own problems, so everything just spiraled. So I was like, I have to get back to work straight away. And so I went and spoke to my doctor. I was going back really soon anyway because I was a workaholic. And so I asked to go back and she said, oh, well, you can only go back 3 days per week. So probably a few of you here in the educational sector and the government sector would understand graduated return to work programs. So I had to do a graduated return to work program, which meant all of a sudden everybody knew my personal history. Absolutely everything about me. Jess has anxiety. Team members, managers, staff. I was the talk of the office. And so I went from being someone who was really well respected on the path to a senior executive to being considered the most incompetent person in the room. And how did that happen? I'd worked with these people for 10 years. How does one little bit of information change their interaction with me to then think that I can't do my job. They didn't want to stress me out, so they took away my whole team, moved me to another area, had me pretty much doing executive assistant roles. And when I complained, their solution was to take everyone who was on a workers' compensation claim or who had a disability and put them all in my team and group them all together, because that's their response. So I then ended up with a team of 8 people, with about 4 of them who had bullying complaints against each other. And so that's what happens. And so then I was, underperformer. She's got this team that can't get along. And I'm like, well, what did you think was going to happen? And in the end, I actually got them all getting along, and we were really productive, and they couldn't believe that I could manage to do that with my condition. So the main thing that I learnt from that was assumptions. I am a big believer that assumptions are the reason for nearly every single act of discrimination. Most people aren't intentionally trying to be horrible, but they don't want to offend you. They don't want to ask the wrong questions. So they don't ask, and they make assumptions about what you need, and then they put those assumptions on you. And for me, I needed more work, more responsibility. Should have given me 2 teams to manage, 4 new projects, and then I would have gotten better. But because they took everything away, I got worse and worse and worse. And I started looking around at what solutions there were for people who were highly skilled. Not all people with disabilities are entry level, and I think that sort of comes on to the next bit. So everyone in this room, I'm sure, would know 4.5 million people in Australia have a disability. It's nearly 20% of the population. It's the largest minority group in the world, and it's the only minority group that you can join at any stage of your life. But we're not doing more for it. And we're making these assumptions, and we're putting people into pockets. How can 20% of the population only be able to do entry-level jobs? And that's what I found. So the disability employment service providers focus on entry-level. They place you in the job. They can deem you. So if you don't take the job that they give you, you can lose your benefits. And how is that about progressing the future? And so that's one of the reasons why I came up with enabled employment. Another thing was the big myths and attitudes about it. So I think there's this really big myth about disabilities that it only fits these certain boxes, and I think there's a lot to be said for charities and what they portray as what disability is. What's the sexiest disability so we can make the most money? And that makes the community think that everybody fits into this little square box, but everybody's an individual, and every disability affects everybody differently. As Drisana's really shown to you, 90% of disabilities are all invisible, and I'm the same. So there's people in this room who have disabilities and you wouldn't even know, but as Drisana was saying, we're working at 150% just to fit in and to have the same results as everyone else. And we shouldn't have to do that. And that was the premise behind for founding a business where it's safe to disclose, safe to talk about who you are. So the biggest stereotypes that we face about people with disabilities is, especially in employment, is they're going to be more work, I have to make all these changes to the office, more sick leave, more workers' compensation claims. But it's actually all completely untrue. Every single piece of academic research shows that people with disabilities are just as productive or more productive. They have less sick leave and less workers' compensation claims. Most of the time, they've had that accident. They've been there. Why would they do it to themselves again? Or they know their limits about when they're going to burn out for their mental health, so they never get there again. So they're more likely to succeed than anyone who's coming through the normal application process who doesn't have a disability. So we really need to be taking advantage of that. And that's the whole premise behind our business. So what we set up was an online recruitment portal. It's all about self-service. We don't charge for any of our candidates. The big difference with us is we charge businesses, because you should be paying for a qualified person to come into your employment. And just because they have a disability, why shouldn't they have the same opportunities? And why aren't they as worthy as the next person with their skills and qualifications to come in? So that's the main point of difference with us. We chose to be a for-profit company to try and instigate social change, because if there's more competition, there's more services, there's more offerings, and there's better outcomes for people with disabilities. It also challenges those attitudinal myths and stereotypes straight up. If currently the disability employment service providers pay you to take on someone with a disability, do you think that if someone was paid to take on me or you, would they consider you a great find? Or would they think that you're obviously going to cause problems and have less capabilities because you have to get paid to take them on? So that's why we flip everything around on its head, and we charge the businesses for our services. And I'm very happy to say, after 2.5 years of running, we are making a profit. It can happen. It doesn't have to be a charity, and it doesn't have to be a government-run or led employment opportunity for people with disabilities, because we should be valued for who we are and our skills. So one thing we did learn throughout the process, because of the way that we engage people, what we do with the teams before they start and that person, is that there was lots of other groups who were facing the same discrimination, and our results were working for them as well. And so what we found was that was veterans, so if they've been wounded psychologically or physically, but also just veterans transitioning from the military to civilian life. It's a really mentally stressful process for them, and so we really work with them to make that happen. And then we've recently expanded to include Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders and seniors, so people who are 55 and over. And again, it's about myths and attitudes and prejudice, and that's where we have the best success, is because we break all of that down before the person starts. So our services, the biggest thing that we do is try and fit in with what businesses need. We don't go, here, we're going to throw people at you and you should find a job for them. We go, what jobs do you have? And we'll find the person who's got those skills and abilities. And again, that results in longevity, people staying in the jobs. And that's where we really try and focus. So touching on that disclosure and assumptions, I've got a bit of like crowd participation. And if anyone knows the answer, don't yell it out. So as an example of, I think we're talking about reasonable adjustments and accessibility and asking a person. So Stephen Hawking did his grand tour. You probably all saw it on the news. It was going to be at the Opera House. And he was doing a worldwide tour. And I like to ask, if you were the person in charge of his tour, what do you think we would have needed to do to set it up? So everyone... Come on, someone. Big pardon? Ramps, yeah. Great. See, you guys are listening. This is good. Because I normally get ramps, he'd need a carer, he'd need hotels, he needs certain accessibility, he'd need his software, all of that sort of stuff. But you know what happened when you asked him? He was like, do a hologram, baby. He was a hologram on stage for his world tour. It was filmed where he was most comfortable, had what he needed, everything supported. But he didn't have to travel, but he could do a world tour. He was projected onto screen as a hologram. So that's the real difference. And think about the impact on him by him actually designing it. And that's what we mean. Like, I think he's a great example because he's one of the people that you can't challenge his intelligence because of his disability, because he just immediately swipes that down. And so I think it's a really good educational tool for people of the community who don't understand the disability sector, because that is one person in the celebrity view that they will never challenge against his abilities. So I've got another example, which is a practical example about reasonable adjustment and accessibility. And I'm going to talk about Sharon, who's one of our staff members. So she's an amazing award-winning journalist. She used to work with the Prime Minister, with the Islamic community during 9/11 and during a lot of the terrorist attacks. She's written a book about it. She's amazing. She's got a disability. She's got spinal stenosis. She walks with a cane, and she's also got post-traumatic stress disorder. So by the time I found her, she thought she was unemployable, but she's completely employable for me. She works from home exclusively and she works all night because she doesn't sleep. So I wake up in the morning and everything's ready to go. It's a great arrangement. But in her previous employment, she was working in a place that had a fire door for the kitchen. And every time she got a cup of tea with her stick, it was a pull door. And she couldn't do both with her stick and her cup of coffee. And so she would ask the lady who sat closest to open the door for her. Do you know who made the complaint? Yep, she was sick of having to get up and open the door for Sharon. So the whole office went into a tailspin. Meetings, how are we going to change the building? We've got to get sliding doors. Oh, it already meets all the accessibility requirements for disability. This is unbelievable. What's the solution? Let's move Sharon to another building. Completely away from her team. She used to have to travel with a trolley and a stick for about 600 metres between the two offices because they wanted to treat her exactly the same as everyone else. So she's completely excluded, sitting by herself in another area. And do you know what Sharon says? If they had asked her, could you get me a $5 shelf from Bunnings and put it next to the door so I could put my cup of coffee on the door, open the door, go through, get my cup of coffee and go off and do my job? Like, they're really simple solutions. And 95% of our requests for changes is about flexibility, times, when they start, when they finish, how they manage their condition. And what we do that's the biggest difference is before someone starts, we make sure that everything is in place that that person needs. Because we ask them, what do you need to perform the best in your job? What do you need to have the best outcomes? And then we make that happen before the person starts, and we make sure that everyone in the team comes to us, asks their stupid questions, gets it all out, so that they don't discriminate, so they don't make assumptions, so that when the person starts, it's all about them doing their job. And that's it. So I'm happy to say, like, we do short-term placements, small-term contracts, long-term things, but 90% of the people that we've placed are still in their jobs today, like 2 years later, because they were qualified for the job and they do the job. They did not thrown at them, just take them on and told what they should be doing. And that's our biggest point of difference. And so I think I'd like to sort of wrap that up in a nutshell and sort of talk about what that's meant. So fortunately, as I was saying, it's been successful. We've got 12 major corporate contracts. We're working with government departments and we're challenging and breaking those myths every time we go ahead. As we were sort of saying earlier, so I've had some massive achievements, recognised as a finalist for Australian of the Year this year, won the Telstra Businesswoman of the Year, and we just got back from New York where we were recognised as the most innovative business in the world. So yeah, so it's the first time it's ever been done, but that's coming back to why. I went looking for it. It should have existed. It's common sense. I needed the service. Why wasn't it there? And whenever I went to anyone, they were like, oh, that's a no-brainer. Doesn't it already exist? It does not exist anywhere in the world. And why is that? And that's what we need to start challenging. But I think the main thing is we shouldn't just be asking the people with disabilities what they need. We should be asking everyone, what do you need to perform the best in your job? Because then everyone is treated the same, everyone has the best performance, and that person with a disability is immediately part of the team because they're not excluded by their preferential treatment, so everyone talks in the background. But it's about how do you make the most inclusive environment for everyone and make sure that they all work together. So I think that's probably how I'd like to finish off if anyone has any questions, or I hope I haven't gone over time.
Jessica, that was quite amazing. I'm sure we will have questions in the room. Pop your hand up and we'll get the microphone to you. Yep, down the back here.
What a terrific presentation. Thank you very much. I'm a PhD student and I'm studying the barriers to higher degree by research for people with disability. And I'd just like to ask you, with so many negative things that happen in universities and in life, and with attitudes towards people with disability, how do you remain positive?
Yeah, we've got a mantra at our work, and everyone abides
I'm
by it.
sorry, I can't hear you.
Sorry, we've got a mantra at our business, and everyone abides by it. It's we kill people with kindness. Because sometimes you walk out of a meeting going, did that just happen? Really? So you have to, people start with me, I talk about you have to take one negative opportunity and instead of let that absolutely drag you down, because it could cripple you. Some of the things that we hear and see every day, and you have to think about how you can take that example and use that to help millions of people. And so I always talk about that first when people start, and then they see that horrible discrimination, and some of it's been from the people you would least expect. Normally when we meet with a diversity and inclusion specialist in a business, we know we're going to have a bad time. So that's and that's because they've got KPIs about meeting gender diversity, about meeting lesbian, gay, bi and transgender diversity, but they don't have KPIs about disability, so they don't care. But yeah, it's about kill them with kindness. We just always come back with positive stories. We always tell them about our stories. We keep at them, send them links, send them information. It's just constantly hitting them with positivity. And most of the time they come back to us 3 months later and go, we've realised after speaking with you that we don't have a very good plan, or we're not doing the right thing for people with disabilities, and what can we do? And they'll ask us for advice.
Okay, have we got more questions in the room? Someone else would like to put their hand up? Yep, here.
Thank you. I don't want to give the impression that at our university we don't give a lot of supports to students who really need it, but one of the issues that we have to work with is students coming thinking that they need a heap of support and wanting things that we think that they could do without. So we work consciously with trying to, in our work practice, help them understand that they can do things differently or in another way, or that they're not seeing the capabilities they've got. How do you work with that? So it's sort of like an embedded sort of sense of their own inability.
Yeah, I think we do exactly probably the same as what you do, and that's the accessibility brokering that I was talking about. So we ask them what they need to perform the best in their job, and then we work with them to make realistically what we can happen. And sometimes we've got an example where we couldn't get a screen reader for someone because they were working for a government department that has XP. It doesn't have the inbuilt screen reader. So the solutions we had to do was we got her an iPad that had Defence Security Network, so she could access those documents on the iPad to be able to use the inbuilt screen reader on that. We also bought her a manual screen reader for her computer and things like that. So it's about thinking outside the box. But for her, she was like, I have to have this screen reader, but I'm like, it's physically impossible. You can't change the whole defence network you have to upgrade the computer system to have it. So it's about thinking outside the box and negotiating on what you can do, but we work to absolutely deliver everything we can within our abilities for them. But it's a dialogue, and it's the same as my expectations when I go somewhere. You always sit down with someone and they talk about your expectations and what they can deliver and what they can't deliver. But we make sure they have everything they need to be able to do the job.
Just on that, I was wondering when you spoke about the kind of double-edged sword of disability funding and the charity mindset, which is really a sort of a dominant narrative in the way we've thought about disability, and the idea that we are doing people a favour by giving them a job. How hard is it to sort of change that paradigm when it's such a powerful one in the way we approach disability?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing that we do is our staff are reflective of the groups that we represent. So when we meet with people, we already challenge their stereotypes immediately by meeting with them. Plus, we've been there, we've all been discriminated against. We've got people with disabilities, we have veterans, we have spouses of veterans. They've all seen it firsthand, and we're about to hire our first Aboriginal Australian because we don't think that we can engage with that community group unless we've got a good understanding of what they've been through. And that's where we really challenge those barriers with the business. We meet with them. We tell them all about our stories, the discrimination that we've had, and we're sitting in front of them and challenging them immediately to think, wow, they've all got disabilities. And so that's our first sort of thing. And then it's making them pay for it, making them realise the value of it. Because if you pay for something, then you value it. And that's probably the biggest impact that has on that, and that really changing that way that we deliver the services, because we give them the most qualified person for the job and we compete on the open market. So we don't want preferential treatment. We want to put a person in with everyone else, and we have nearly a 40% fill rate, whereas a normal recruitment agency has a 25% fill rate. So competing on the normal market, our candidates are the most qualified for the job.
Jessica, it's such an impressive model and really exciting to hear about just how successful it is. Please thank Jessica May for a really inspirational speech.